You know, one of my heroes is Sir Winston Churchill, and he famously switched parties. He went from one party, the Conservatives, over to the left side, then he went back. And you know what he said? He said ratting, which it's called in crossing the floor. In England, it's called ratting. Ratting's easy. Re-ratting and going back to where you ratted from, that's hard. So we're giving the opportunity, as Mr. Genua said, for the NDP to give a consideration and re-rat.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
I'm sensing where we're going here, Mr. Massey. Will you also yield your time so Ms. Shanahan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's like I have a crystal
You're ahead of
ball
the
or
game.
something.
As usual, you're ahead of the game.
Ms. Shanahan, welcome back to OGGO.
Okay.
It's up to you to...
Thank you very much, Chair, and I see that everyone is waiting with bated breath for what I now have to say, so it's a pleasure for me to ask the committee at this time, or to say to the committee that I would like to withdraw the amendment that is currently under discussion, and I think the Chair may need to ask for unanimous consent to do so.
Couple things. Ms. Shanahan is subbing in for Mr. Sousa, whose was amendment, asking for UC to withdraw the amendment. Do we have consent to withdraw the amendment? I will ask one last time. If you wish not to, just say no. Okay, we have a no for withdrawing the amendment. Next on the well, we can continue on that, or we can just have a quick vote. I think I know where we're going on this, so are we prepared to vote on the original amendment? Go ahead, Mr. Sousa.
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment to the amendment, and I'd like to read it as follows.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. We don't have an amendment on.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion.
To the motion, thank you. And if you do you have it in writing, you can forward to the clerk as well.
I can maybe have someone submit it.
Oh, just
I can read it. I would like to read it so you guys can understand what we're saying.
Just don't read it very fast because the clerk has to type as we go. Go ahead,
all right.
Mr. Sousa.
So I move that in Part E, after the words "provided that," the following be added. When these documents are received by the clerk, which then creates a new F, they be available at the clerk's office for viewing by committee members only for 1 week, to be designated by the committee no later than 30 days following the receipt of the contracts, under the supervision of the clerk, and that no personal mobile, electronic, or recording devices of any kind be permitted in the room that week, and that no notes be taken out of the room. This then creates a new G, which reads as follows. Representatives of innovation, science, and economic development be invited to appear for a 2-hour in-camera meeting, and that during the meeting, only committee members and support staff required for the meeting be permitted to attend, and that no personal mobile, electronic, or recording devices of any kind be permitted in the room during the meeting. That during the meeting, numbered paper copies of the documents be given to committee members who are present in person by the clerk at the beginning of said meeting, and that these copies be returned to the clerk at the end of the meeting, and that the clerk be instructed to destroy said copies, and that no notes be taken out of the room. And then what is now F would become H, and it reads, and as follows, that redacted versions of be added before these documents. So it reads as follows. That redacted versions of these documents shall be deposited with the clerk of the committee and then change 1 week to 3 weeks. And that the words and without redactions and be published on the committee's website be deleted. So to clarify, it would then read as follows. H, that redacted versions of these documents shall be deposited with the clerk of the committee within 3 weeks in both official languages.
No, let me be clear. This is not to withdraw the amendment. This is on the amendment.
You told me don't finish your sentence.
So, just to be clear, the vote on the on Mr. Sousa's amendment on of the main motion. So we have Ms. Atwin, we have Mr. Baines. Mr. Juari.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzmierczyk.
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Perkins.
No.
Mr. Jennis.
No.
Mr. Kirk.
No.
Madame Vignola.
No.
Mr. Massey.
No.
So it's 5 nays, 5 yays.
Sorry, no.
Then 6 nays, 5 yays.
We are now back to the original motion. Taking the speaking list. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter?
Vote on the original motion.
Well, no speaking list. Can we vote on the original motion?
Yes.
Here's the original motion.
So, voting on the original amendment, or the original motion, if I could speak properly. The motion.
So on the motion of Ms. Block as amended, Ms. Atwin.
Against.
Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Juari.
Against.
Mr. Kuzmierczyk.
No.
Mr. Souza. Sorry, I apologize. Ms. Shanahan, my apologies.
All right. Something I have to declare to everyone.
My apologies.
No.
That'll teach you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Souza. Ms. I promise I will get there. Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
Mr. Jennis.
Yes.
Mr. Kirk.
Yes.
Madame Vignola. Mr. Massey.
No.
6 nays, 4 yays.
Yeah, Mr. Massey, the motion goes down. Our motion is defeated. Mr. Massey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a new motion I'd like to table today and now, and it's being circulated, I know, electronically. I hope that it's getting through. And I can either read the motion in and then start from there, but I leave it myself in your hands.
And why don't you read it in
Okay.
slowly?
Yes. And some of this is familiar, but there's some parts that were appropriately pointed out by yourself, Mr. Chair, that made it very awkward to do a sub-amendment to the motion, so we've accommodated the changes. So that in order to issue the production of copies of any contract, memorandum of understanding, or any other contract between the ministers and the departments directly related to the implementation of the contracts agreements, including but not limited to all provisions relating to the hiring or use of foreign workers and concerning language requirements and language of work, and in quotes, quotes A, Stellantis, NV, LG Energy Solutions Limited, Nexstar Energy Inc., or Volt Energy Solutions, there's a whole list of them here, Inc., related to the construction of an electric vehicle battery facility in Windsor, Ontario.
Sorry, point of order, Chair.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Jennis.
So, Mr. Chair, the NDP had long said they supported transparency for this contract. They just flip-flopped and voted. Let me finish.
I'll decide.
Let me
Thanks
finish
for the
now.
advice from the
You've talked a lot here, Mr. Kuzmierczyk.
It's not a point of order.
The NDP have just completely contorted and flipped themselves over to vote with the government to bury these contracts. Now they're proposing apparently a new motion, which is to try to save face in the midst
Mr.
of
Chair,
this
that
cover-up.
point of order,
We don't have
this is a point of
copies
order. That's
of
not
that
appropriate, Mr.
motion.
Chair.
The member is saying he's reading it out, but he's very clearly not starting from the beginning.
Mr. Chair, he will.
This
my
is a.
colleague will
Sorry,
have-
let me
Mr. Chair,
interrupt
point of
just
order.
one moment, Mr. Generous. Mr. Kuzmierczyk.
Yes. This is
please.
clear. This
Yeah.
is black and white.
Let him
Yeah.
finish, and then you can
Yeah.
speak in, or I'm going to address. I'm going to follow up another issue.
After the
on
amendment,
this.
he will have the time to argue
Yeah.
whether he is for or against it.
Thanks.
This is not the time, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
This is a
Thanks for
point of
that.
order.
Just get to the point, Mr. Generous,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to...
Mr. Chair, I'm very familiar with the rules. I would like to know what this motion is. We have not received a copy of it.
Mr. Chair, he's reading the motion.
Can you respect the
Kuzmierczak.
chair, Mr. Kuzmierczak? I've been recognized and you haven't.
Let him finish his point of order, and then I will chime in on issue.
And you can
then.
you can read out municipal policies that have nothing to do with this
Mr.
some other
can
time.
you return
Chair, but,
and to the point?
Yes, Chair. Mr. Massey was very clearly not reading from the beginning of the motion. We need the full text of the motion, ideally in writing. Yeah. He's provided no notice of it, and he's not obliged to do that, but we need to be able to have the text of the motion fully. The NDP just defeated our call for transparency for the disclosure of the contract. They could have proposed an amendment.
This is beyond the pale.
So we need to see the text
He is mostly
of the motion.
correct on that. I am just going to chime in that I could very well I'll let Mr. Massey continue, but we're going to go no further. We're going to suspend afterwards because I do believe procedurally it might be out of order. But I'll let you just read it in, and then we are going to suspend immediately after.
I was on section B, that Volkswagen Group, Volkswagen AG, Volkswagen Group of America, Inc., or Power CO SC related to the construction of an electric vehicle battery facility in St. Thomas, Ontario. C, Northvolt AB, Northvolt of North America, Northvolt Batteries North America, Inc., or Cubery, Inc., related to the construction of an electric vehicle battery facility in Saint-Bill-le-Grand, Quebec. D, Ford Motor Company of Canada, Limited, Eco Pro BM Company, Limited, Eco Pro Innovation Company, Limited, Eco Pro Global, Eco Pro Co., Limited, Eco Pro Eco Cam Canada Inc., Eco Pro, a lot of eco stuff going on here, Eco Pro Cam Canada General Partner Inc., Saskatchewan, Ontario, SKEI Technology, LT SK Inc., SK Innovation Company, LT SK Engineering and Construction Company, LT, Sun Lake Company, LT, or Eco Pro Cam Canada, LG, related to the construction of electric vehicle battery materials productions plant in Quebec, and Umicore Rechargeable Battery Materials Canada Inc., Umicore SA/NV, or Umicore Canada Inc., related to the construction of an electric vehicle battery materials production plant in Loyalist Township, Ontario, and order due issue for copies of all labor market impact assessments, including the applications for them, prepared in relation to the construction of an electric vehicle battery facility in Windsor, Ontario, provided when these documents are received by the clerk. New, this is another section of F, so it's just F right now, but it was to kind of replace the old F, that departments and agencies tasked with gathering these
Point of order, Chair. There is no old F. This is not an amendment. This member voted against the previous motion. There is no old F. So he seems to be reading parts of a new motion without reading the whole motion.
And I realize that, and as I mentioned, it may very well be, I've been discussing this with our clerk, it may very well be completely out of order, but I'm just going to let him finish reading it, and then the clerk and we will suspend, and we'll come back with a ruling. But you may very well be right, Mr. Generous, but we're just going to let him finish speaking.
Yeah, well, yeah, I won't reference those elements. I was just doing that out of courtesy for members so they could follow along. That the departments and agencies tasked with gathering these documents redacted according to the Access to Information Acts, with the exception that all companies must fully disclose and make publicly available to correct any misinformation of the following. 1. The number of foreign workers who will be building the plants involved in equipment installation, technology transfer, training, and operations. 2, the number of Canadian temporary/construction jobs to be created and how many permanent production positions are to be created as part of the contract guarantees. 3, the steps that will be taken to prioritize the employment of Canadians for building the plants and equipment installations. 4, that redacted versions of these documents shall be deposited with the clerk of committee within 3 weeks in both official languages. 5, that information related to the above specific areas not included in the contracts be provided by the above-mentioned companies to the committee in writing. Now, another section, G, would be the committee invite CEOs of Stellantis, NV, LG Energy Solutions Limited, Nexstar Energy, Inc., to answer questions. H, the committee calls on the governments to continue to work with all the companies mentioned in the motion to develop training and job opportunities for Canadian workers for construction to equipment, installation/operation, technology transfer and production. And as well, finally, that the committee submit an access to information request to ask the Information Commissioner to complete a third-party review of the redactions to ensure a complete process and report back to the committee for an in-camera meeting.
Mention we are going to suspend.
I'm entrenched on a
We will rule the new one in order. So, Mr. Massey, it is in order. You've got the floor. I see Mr. Genuis and Mr. Perkins.
What I'm worried about is I think the worst of all solutions is that we sit here to Christmas and beyond, the holiday season and beyond, with filibustering. Meanwhile, we're not showing any type of movement towards trying to find a solution, and the investment opportunities in our country are not only going to be seized to some degree, they're also going to be under scrutiny further, and there'll be no clarity at all about what the terms and conditions are for the jobs, leading to more confusion and more public debate. The jobs here are significant. The country's auto investment is significant because it also leads to transferable technology and other types of innovation. So with that, I will say thank you for the indulgence of some of the confusion around what's taken place to try to find a solution, but I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Massey. Mr. Genuis.
Chair, there's not a lot that surprises me in this place, but I am quite shocked, frankly, by the approach that the NDP has taken. So here's where we are, right? Over $40 billion that the federal government is planning on spending on these various subsidies. Information has come out that these subsidies are, in many cases, going to fund foreign replacement workers, not creating paychecks for Canadians, but supporting foreign replacement workers. And as a result of a lack of transparency around these contracts and concerns about how this spending of Canadian tax dollars is going to bring in foreign replacement workers instead of creating good jobs here in Canada, Conservatives have sought transparency from the government. We've tried to get copies of the contract, which we believe that the shareholders, the taxpayers, the people who are paying these subsidies, and the workers who are affected by them deserve to see. So we signed the required letter, brought this committee together, and at the time we had the support of the other opposition parties saying that these contracts should be made public. And that is a principled position that I think is widely supported by Canadians, especially supported by workers. We stand with workers. We believe that creating good jobs for Canadian workers is critical, and that the government has an obligation to be transparent in these cases about public subsidy and about what the impact of that subsidy is going to be in terms of workers and jobs. And we just had at this committee the NDP, after Liberal filibustering to block that motion, we had the NDP fold. We had, after grand statements by Mr. Massey on transparency and on supporting workers, the NDP have folded like a cheap suit and voted against our motion. We just had a vote on our motion to require the disclosure of these contracts. Now, the Liberals had been filibustering. They ended their filibuster. Our motion came to a vote, and the NDP, despite saying they supported the motion, despite the fact that we had incorporated a number of their amendments that refined the language, the NDP voted against it. So much for transparency, so much for workers. A little bit of pressure from the Trudeau Liberals in the form of a filibuster leads the NDP to changing their position and abandoning all of their stated principles. And what do we have before us? We have this motion from Mr. Massey that says a parliamentary committee should file an ATIP. Mr. Speaker, news for anybody watching. Any member of the public has a right to file an ATIP. Parliamentary committees have a constitutionally protected, unfettered right to send for documents and to set their own timelines in the process.
We're at a place here that's very disappointing because we've had a call, I think a fairly united call from the opposition parties to have the contracts released. There are clauses in the contracts that give the company the right to withdraw the things that are commercially sensitive, but other than that, the contract should be released. And in fact, the leader of the NDP has been up publicly calling for that in question period. of the government. So it's surprising to me right now that what we have before us is an amendment that, or a motion that says, well, what we should do is have the contracts released and then have a secret discussion at some point about what the Information Commissioner says about the contracts. And I'll remind people that that is $44.7 billion worth of amendments that are $44.7 billion of subsidies that are in this between Northvolt, Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Ford. And the reality is that we're in this place because the government, the Liberals, don't seem to have their act together on what this does. It started off with an announcement saying there would be, in Volkswagen, the minister actually said publicly that there would be 30,000 jobs at Volkswagen. Turns out, of course, that's not true. That the contract itself, there are two contracts for each of these, a construction contract and a production subsidy contract, that wasn't true. That it's about 2,700 jobs. So, plus or minus 10 times for the minister. And when it comes to the Stellantis contract, we know that even the president of Nexstar, the Stellantis company, seems to be confused. He's put out so many numbers that he qualifies to be a member of the Liberal government. He said only a week and a half ago there would be 2,300 local tradespeople to help with the construction and the installation of this plant. Now he says there's going to be 900 people coming from Korea to do that work. So which is it? It seems a different day, a different story from the company. And that's why we're calling for a little bit of truth here. And the truth comes from the release of the contracts. Most of the contracts are fairly simple. Understand these contracts are not some great corporate intellectual property secret. They are a contract about how much money per battery produced will the federal government subsidize these large global players for the production of them. And the IRA, the President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, sets out clearly what those subsidies are. They're 100% of the cost of the batteries will be subsidized by the taxpayers of Canada between now and 2029. And then in the following year, it'll be 75%. And then the following year, it'll be 50%. And the following year, it'll be 25%, till we're down to no subsidy in 2033. That's public. That's what's in the IRA. And that's what is mirrored in these contracts, if you're to believe what the minister said, which is that these contracts mirror that. And having read the Volkswagen contract myself, the only one here that's read it, I can tell you that the minister is right. It does mirror the IRA numbers. And the PBO also said that in committee. So what you have here is until the year 2029, in all of these contracts, the taxpayer covering 100% of the cost of the production of these batteries. Wow, I'm shocked that any company would come here to Canada for 100% subsidy. And I don't think there's a fear that these jobs are going somewhere else, since nobody else other than the U.S. is offering 100% battery subsidy. Now, the NDP, and I'll put it more gently, one of my heroes is Sir Winston Churchill, and he famously switched parties. He went from one party, the Conservatives, over to the left side, then he went back. And you know what he said? He said ratting, which is called in crossing the floor, in England it's called ratting. Ratting's easy. Re-ratting and going back to where you ratted from, that's hard. So we're giving the opportunity, as Mr. Genuis said, for the NDP to give a consideration and re-rat and go back to their original position, which was to call for the open, transparent release of these contracts so that Canadians can see exactly what it is, their $44.7 billion of taxpayers' money, that's $4,213 per household, going to these large multinationals. So we're very disappointed that the NDP has chosen to change its position. We're hopeful through the debate that we'll have shortly that the NDP will listen to the logic that they once agreed to, which was transparency. We know the Liberals don't agree to that, but we're hoping that the NDP will come back to their original position, which is the best way to ensure that there are Canadian-only jobs because the story changes every day, is for these contracts to be public. And I'll leave it for there, Mr. Chair, and go back on the speaker.
Just a point of order, Chair. I think we've exhausted the 5 minutes, so I'd like to move that we adjourn.
We have go to a vote to adjourn
So what are we adjourned?
the meeting. Moving to, if there's a dilatory motion to adjourn the meeting. We'll do this quickly, and then we can. Okay, we're adjourned.